thank you so much for joining us today for the Nourishing Your Baby Lactation series. We'd like to first thank our sponsors, the Roanoke Public Libraries, the Roanoke Public Library Foundation, Star City Reads, Feed, Read, and Grow, and of course, the Junior League of the Roanoke Valley, who sponsored this event through a community focus grant. We thank you so much for joining as well, and we hope you enjoyed today's video.
Thanks for joining us, Laura. So I'm a physician that specializes in women's mental health, but I'm not a mother, except to my 2 furry dogs, which I consider sort of half human. But all that aside, you are a new mom.
I am, yes.
And I wondered if you might share some of your experience of what it was like, your birthing experience in the postpartum period.
I am happy to share. So I am a mom to 1 daughter. She is now 3.5, almost 4. She'll be 4 in July. And I was actually pregnant with her my 4th year of medical school. And then for those that don't know, after medical school you graduate, and then you have a little interim period until July 1st, which is when you have your first day.
Like 2 weeks.
Yeah, you have about 2 weeks before then you are a doctor, like a real doctor. Training wheels still, but like you have the certificate that is done.
It's probably, if I dare say, one of the most stressful times in medical education in which to have a child. Like, it's the most nerve-wracking. You were like a baby doctor in medical school, and everybody's watching you to all of a sudden being a full-fledged resident. All the responsibility that comes with being a new doctor, and then to have a baby on top of that, it must have been a lot.
Yes. So like for perspective, which I know you know, but to share, like I started residency first day, July 1st, and then I had our daughter July 11th. My first daughter, like our first child. And I remember the first day that we brought her home, I remember like I took a brief nap, like maybe a 1-hour nap, and then I woke up and I remembered, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a mom. Like I have a child, I need to go find my baby. And then I remember like the first time that she cried at home, I was just like frozen. Like, what do I do? It was totally just that fight or flight kind of deal. And I totally was in flight at that point, which was not natural for me because I'm totally just like a
trying to be really organized and get everything done. And
absolutely.
It's an experience you can't prepare for.
Yeah. Yep. And so that was tough on me. And I still, to that degree, like I didn't know that I was suffering from anything. I thought, like this is probably how everybody feels.
Overwhelmed, tired, unsure about what to do.
Yep, like totally, and everything was different. My body was different. My responsibilities, like feeling like a loss of autonomy almost, to where it's like I didn't remember who I was really because it was nothing about me. It was everything sustaining, my baby. And so it was so hard on me. And so it really wasn't until yes, I went back to work at 8 weeks after that. I thought 8 weeks was going to be a really long time. It was a very short time, And so
you think 2 months when you're someone who's worked as hard as we are to get through medical school, like 8 weeks feels like, oh, that'll be plenty of time.
Yeah, that'll be plenty of time, and even I was going to do 6 weeks. I'm so glad that I took the extra 2 weeks, and I wish I would have taken more.
12, 18.
I mean, so many places in Europe have such an extended amount of time, which is so good for bonding, and we just don't have that. It's just like really not.
Yeah, it's not built into our system yet.
It's really not built in yet. Yeah, fingers crossed. I think that would be very helpful.
So did you notice your mood suffer as a result of?
I didn't. I mean, I didn't notice it. I remember, I think I would dread nighttime because when the sun would go down, everybody else around me, my husband,
sort of gets quiet.
It's quiet, and then it's just me
and
the baby.
Thoughts.
Yeah, yep. And so, with breastfeeding, waking up every few hours, and I don't fall asleep easy anyway. So when I'm awake, and that's true too, even now as a physician, when I'm awake, I'm awake.
And I think especially a lot of moms find it hard with breastfeeding, that the on-demand feeding is really taxing, and they don't give themselves a lot of slack for, what, maybe this one time I could not do it. You know, my husband could do it. My husband could use a bottle and use stored milk.
Yes.
Instead of you having the constant drive.
Yeah. And so with that too, like, one thing I'm happy about is I did introduce a bottle that Grace would take early. So like within the first few days after her birth, because, you know, I know that, you know, folks will say potentially like nipple confusion, but that was not the case for us, because I knew that like eventually there was going to come a time, like she's going to have to be able to take this bottle. And so that did make my life a little easier, because like you were talking about, like the blocks of time, it wasn't until like my milk supply was established and I would have a little bit of something left over. Yes. Yeah. Once I got my first solid 4 hours of sleep at week 6, that is when I felt like the most restored.
Right, and didn't it feel like a miracle?
I felt like I could actually think and put sentences together.
I see a lot of women come into my office, and one of the first things I suggest that you can do at home for yourself before medication and before you're established with a therapist to treat postpartum or perinatal mood and anxiety disorders is to get that block of sleep. I can't say it firmly enough or drive it home strongly enough.
Absolutely.
But so I'm glad you echo that. Thanks.
Yes.
So what are some of the logistics that you learned about returning to work, about how to do it, what it looks like?
Yes. So I would say I'm not an like an expert in this, but I have personal experience that I can definitely speak to. And I acknowledge like it's different for everybody. But my personal experience and what I would recommend, like in hindsight, is start to plan really early. Like for me, I think I should have probably planned more. In terms of, yes, I did notify my boss of my pregnancy, you know, but I really didn't know what to kind of accommodate. Like I didn't know, and now we have a better policy in place since, you know,
and
it's happened.
I even try to encourage people to do preconceptual counseling. Like when you're thinking about getting pregnant, if you have a mental health disorder, how will that be handled? But also, where are you working? Are you going to stay in that workplace? Like, what are the policies? Can your partner take time off? What does that look like? Like to sort of start a whole folder about like, what's our plan?
Absolutely. And so things that I would probably encourage is talk with your boss. Things that I think about too is like, okay, well, are you going to need certain accommodations? So as a resident, it was a little bit variable because our schedule is like,
and you're in different places a lot.
Yes. And so it was harder, but if you have more of a routine schedule, like say if I were outpatient and I could like solidify a block of time to know every 3 hours I will need 30 minutes to be able to pump. And then also to plan for like, is there a place to store milk? Is there a place, you know, to be able to wash the pump parts? Just like all kinds of logistics that you don't really consider, I think, as a first time brand new mom in a brand new job. And so those were things, but then too, childcare.
And you have a partner who's also working. Like,
yes, yep.
He's not always around.
Yep.
He can't pick up much of the slack. He has a fairly high stress job as well.
Yes, and so it's hard when, it's hard in terms of like the division of labor, because when both partners I think are like, he works as much, sometimes more. And so just like trying to fit everything in at that time, it took a lot of diligent planning. And so I would recommend that for most moms. And too, like even like going back to work, I had to get new clothes before I went back because none of my old clothes would fit. And so planning that, or planning your route to work, like if you have to take your child, you know, if you have more than one child, if you have to drop one off at school and one off at the babysitter or daycare, like knowing how long that's actually going to take you, and then try to arrive to work early.
So like looking back now, are there things you wish you had done differently with respect to maybe some of those depressed moods you had and or your return to work? Like are there takeaways you would tell women that you want them to know?
Yes.
Or partners?
Or partners. You know, I think as much as you can, do a division of labor. And I know that is sometimes hard, but you know, my mom, she's such a saint, and my dad, honestly, both. Like they would really come over to whenever my husband would have, you know, a trial or something, and he couldn't be present overnight, and he had to be like fully on the next day. My parents would come over, and I remember, you know, starting at week 6, maybe a little before, like my mom would give me that block of sleep every Thursday night. Like, and so I knew,
something you could count on.
like I knew that I could just, if I could make it to Thursday, I could get, contiguous sleep. Yeah, and so I thought that like having that support is great if you can build that in. And I know it's not always possible, but division of labor that way. And then also too, allowing myself just to be fully present wherever I was. And so, like at home, being fully present with my daughter, and just enjoying that time and not kind of like catastrophizing, looking into the future.
What was happening at the hospital.
Right, not doing that. And then even when I was at work, like some folks will say, oh, like send video, like have whoever's watching your child send videos and stuff. That did not help me. That made me like feel very conflicted.
Disconnected, yeah.
Yeah, and so whenever I was at work, I wanted to be fully present there too.
At work.
Because otherwise, for me, I have to compartmentalize or else I just get very dysregulated. And so just allowing myself to be at work and not feel guilty, because I knew that I was working to help her and I wanted her to see me, and even now, like if I have to leave you guys, it's because I'm going to help other people that need me, like you are safe, and so, and I think probably just like reframing my thoughts in a more positive way, being less hard on myself.
Yeah, less hard on yourself. I think that's a great place to end. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dr. Wells.